Welcome to Deep Dive. Today we're plunging into what feels like a truly pivotal moment for the UK's immigration landscape. It's a rapidly shifting picture, and our mission here is to really cut through the complexity of these new policies. We want to help you understand their immediate impacts and give you a much clearer sense of what's unfolding right now and, well, what might be coming next. Is the UK sort of leaning towards a fortress island mentality, perhaps? And what are the hidden costs? That's the big question we're exploring.
Absolutely. And we've gathered quite a bit of material looking at the direct government statements, policy papers, economic analysis, even perspectives from advocacy groups. It covers, well, pretty much everything. These stark new warnings for international students, some critical, very urgent deadlines for refugee family reunion, and these broader government reforms that could really reshape the UK's whole approach to migration. Our goal really is to connect these dots for you, flag up the crucial insights, and just make sure you're not only informed, but genuinely prepared for what feels like some quite profound shifts.
Exactly. This isn't just one single policy change we're talking about. It's a multifaceted picture we're trying to build for you today. We'll look at those explicit government warnings, the big policy changes hitting the student community, potential economic ripples for towns and cities, and we'll even try to clarify the practical differences between terms like deportation and removal. It's a lot to get through, definitely, but we're here to guide you. Okay, so let's dive straight in. There's this very direct, quite stark message coming straight from the UK Home Office. They've launched a major campaign, essentially putting tens of thousands of international students on notice. Don't overstay your visas. And what's really striking here, I think, is the directness. For the first time, officials are contacting around 130,000 students and their families directly, text, emails. And the message itself, it really doesn't pull any punches. It reads, if you submit an asylum claim that lacks merit, it will be swiftly and robustly refused. Any request for asylum support will be assessed against destitution criteria. If you do not meet the criteria, you will not receive support. If you have no legal right to remain in the UK, you must leave. If you don't, we will remove you. Pretty blunt.
It really is. And what's immediately clear from this campaign is the government's intent. They want to project this image of firm control, of clarity. This crackdown, as ministers are calling it, it's a direct response to what they describe as an alarming spike in asylum claims. The data shows in the year to June 2025, there were 16,000 asylum claims from students who'd originally come legally on a visa. Now, to give that some context, that's nearly 6 times the number back in 2020, so significant jump. And this shift, it isn't happening in a vacuum. It lines up perfectly with the government's big strategic goal. You know, the one outlined in their May 2025 white paper, restoring control over the immigration system. The aim there is to slash net migration from that record high of 906,000 back in June 2023. So this is clearly part of that bigger picture, signaling they're serious about those numbers.
That's a powerful message, definitely designed to deter people. But, for someone maybe not familiar with all the legal jargon, the terms deportation and removal, they might sound the same. Could you maybe clarify that distinction? Because it seems pretty crucial here, doesn't it?
Absolutely, yeah, it's a really important distinction. When we talk about deportation, generally we're looking at something much more severe. It's typically reserved for people involved in serious crime, or if the Home Secretary personally decides removing them is conducive to the public good. Serious stuff. A deportation order has real weight. It doesn't just expire, and usually comes with a mandatory 10-year ban on coming back. The order itself stays in force until it's actually revoked. Removal, though often called administrative removal, it's more targeted at individuals who just don't have the required legal leave to be in the UK. So think people who've overstayed a visa or maybe breached their visa conditions. The key takeaway for you, really, is that removal is often a less complex administrative process compared to deportation. It's specifically for those without legal permission, rather than necessarily those with a serious criminal record or seen as a security threat. It's the tool they're likely using for this student message.
Right, okay. And beyond these warnings, the government's also putting forward some pretty big policy changes affecting international students directly. That May 2025 white paper mentions things like potentially shortening the graduate visa, from 2 years down to 18 months. That's a big deal for post-study work experience. They're also talking about tougher compliance rules for universities sponsoring students, and even exploring this idea of a levy, like a tax, on the income universities get from international student fees. That money, they say, would be reinvested into higher education and skills. I mean, these aren't small tweaks, are they? It sounds like a fundamental shift.
No, you're absolutely right. Far from minor tweaks. And this brings us to a really critical point. What could the wider impact of these changes be? Beyond just the students themselves, well, the Centre for Cities think tank has sounded quite a significant alarm. They're warning these reforms could seriously hurt struggling UK cities. And here's the insight that often gets missed. In places like, say, Leicester, Plymouth, Hull, Stoke-on-Trent, universities aren't just places of learning, they're huge economic engines. Often they're the biggest employers, driving a disproportionate amount of local jobs, economic activity, even exports, much more so than in London or the southeast. Now, international students currently bring in about a quarter, roughly, of all university income. So you can see for every student put off coming or every barrier to recruitment, you're not just losing tuition fees, you could potentially be chipping away at the economic foundation of these communities, perhaps even accelerating decline instead of helping recovery.
Yeah, it sounds like a really delicate balancing act. The government says it wants to cut net migration, tackle system abuse, but there's this very real risk of maybe unintended, but significant consequences for a sector that's just vital to so many local economies, particularly outside the capital.
Precisely. It's that tension between competing goals. To strengthen what they're calling responsible recruitment, the government's proposals aim to hike up the standards for universities' basic compliance assessments, the BCA. That's essentially their audit, how well they manage sponsoring international students. So for example, universities will need to show a visa refusal rate below 5%, that's down from 10%, a course enrollment rate of at least 95%, up from 90%, and a course completion rate of 90%, up from 85%, tougher targets. Plus there's this new red, amber, green banding system coming in to rate how sponsors are performing. If we connect this to the bigger picture, it's about tightening standards right across the board for education providers, making sure study is genuine. It's about building a system focused on quality and compliance, but like the Center for Cities points out, that system has these really deep economic echoes.
Let's circle back, if we can, to that Home Office warning we started with. It specifically mentioned that any request for asylum support would be assessed against destitution criteria. For someone hearing that term, maybe for the first time, what does destitution actually mean in the eyes of the UK government, especially for someone seeking asylum?
That's a really crucial clarification. The government legally defines destitution in the Immigration and Asylum Act 1999. Basically, a person is considered destitute if they either, 1, do not have adequate accommodation or any means of obtaining it, or 2, they have adequate accommodation but cannot meet their other essential living needs. So it's not just about being homeless. It's a broader lack of the basic means to live: shelter, food, essentials. The assessment looks at your whole situation.
Right. And how does the Home Office actually figure out if someone meets that criteria? Especially with these new rules trying to tighten things up. It sounds complex.
It is, and it's mainly an administrative process. Typically, it starts with an application form, the ASF-1. Applicants often get help from organizations like Migrant Help to fill it out correctly, which is important. Then, caseworkers carefully compare the information on the form with other data the Home Office might already have. Interestingly, unlike some other asylum processes, there isn't currently a requirement for a specific screening interview just for the support application itself, though there are internal procedures to try and ensure it's processed promptly. It's also really vital to remember the Home Office has a legal duty to safeguard children's welfare. That means fair treatment and making sure a child's best interests are a primary consideration in these decisions. When they assess destitution, they look at income, assets, cash, savings, investments, even vehicles. But certain things might be disregarded, like assets you genuinely can't access, or perhaps small one-off charity donations for specific needs, like clothes. Now, here's an important point. If someone's already been granted temporary leave, that gives them the right to work and access public funds.
They generally wouldn't be eligible for Section 95 asylum support anymore. That's the main financial help and accommodation for asylum seekers. Because legally at that point, they're not considered likely to become destitute under the definition.
Okay, now for something incredibly time-sensitive. This needs immediate attention if it affects you or anyone you know. On Wednesday, September 3rd, 2025, the Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, announced what some groups are calling an unprecedented attack on refugee rights. Applications for refugee family reunion are being suspended, and here's the absolutely critical detail demanding urgent action. New applications will not be considered after 3 p.m. is today, Thursday, September 4th, 2025. That is literally today as we're speaking right now.
Yeah, this is huge, and the timing is abrupt, to say the least. It raises profound questions about safe routes into the UK. For many refugees, family reunion has been the only established, safe, legal way for their immediate family, often vulnerable women and children, to join them here after they've been granted protection. The figures are quite stark. In the year to June 2025, 92% of these visas went to women and children. Over half were children. So this immediate suspension slams the door on a crucial established route with virtually no warning. There's no clear timeline for when new rules might appear, but the expectation is they'll be much stricter. We're hearing about possibilities like a waiting period before a refugee can even apply, maybe a minimum income requirement for a sponsor here in the UK, which could exclude many people, even potentially English language tests for family members trying to join them. Organizations like the Refugee Council have called it cruel. They argue it will inevitably push more desperate people toward dangerous, irregular journeys. The human cost is a massive concern here.
It's an absolutely drastic change with almost zero lead time for those affected. Anyone who is maybe thinking of applying or had just started gathering documents, they'd need to act incredibly urgently. Before 3 p.m. EDO today, Thursday, September 4th. It really hammers home the immediate, real-world impact these policy decisions can have. Looking a bit further down the road now, the government seems to be exploring another major shift, a long-term one. This is about how it manages immigration enforcement and identity. We're hearing talk about the potential introduction of digital ID cards, maybe an app, sometimes being called a Brit card. This sounds like a fundamental change in how the government might track and verify people.
Indeed. And this isn't just an isolated idea, it slots into that much wider asylum reform strategy. It's designed to tackle illegal immigration, ease pressures on the asylum system. The broader context suggests a government looking to, modernize enforcement. They want to curb illegal working, strengthen border control. And they see a reliable digital ID as a way to do that across various public services. The stated goal is to make it easier to check if someone is in the UK or not, if they're sticking to their visa rules, what rights they have, work, rent, access services. And this builds directly on the current rollout of the visas. The digital immigration status is replacing physical documents. The direction of travel seems to be towards a fully digital system, where your status is essentially just an app or an online record.
So it's about both convenience maybe and control. But what does this all mean practically for the average person? And are there concerns being raised about such a widespread digital system?
Well, it's that classic balance, isn't it? Between potential efficiency gains and very real worries about civil liberties. The government suggests public attitudes towards digital IDs might have softened. But we have to remember, identity cards have faced significant public resistance in the UK historically. A national ID scheme was actually scrapped back in 2010. Big opposition over privacy, cost. So critics today are raising similar flags, worries about potential over-surveillance, data misuse, or even creating a kind of two-tier society where not having this digital ID makes life very difficult. And beyond just the digital IDs, the government is also beefing up traditional enforcement quite significantly. We're seeing more resources going to tackling illegal working, enforcement teams getting body-worn video cameras for evidence, transparency, they say, and moves to simplify processes for removing foreign national offenders. The overall goal, it seems, is to ensure immigration rules are not just understood, but strictly followed and enforced. Right from border security through to making sure visa holders pay their taxes and meet conditions. It's about closing perceived loopholes and projecting that image of, unflinching control.
We have certainly covered a huge amount today, from those really direct warnings to international students, the incredibly significant and very urgent changes to refugee family reunion, the details around destitution criteria for asylum claims, and this broader, longer-term vision for digital identity and stepped-up enforcement. Seems unequivocally clear, doesn't it? The UK is right in the middle of a profound and pretty rapid shift in its immigration policies, all driven by that stated aim to restore control and bring down net migration figures significantly.
Indeed. I think the material we've looked at really highlights how these changes are interconnected. They seem designed to fundamentally reshape who gets to come to the UK, how long they can stay, and exactly what's expected of them while they're here. And that inevitably has these wide-ranging consequences, economic, social, very human implications. It touches individuals, families, entire communities, even national institutions, understanding these interlocking policies, their stated intent, but also their potential ripple effects. It's absolutely crucial. Crucial for anyone direct impacted, of course, but also for anyone just wanting to be properly informed about what's happening. That question you raised earlier about the UK becoming a fortress island, it definitely feels more relevant than ever right now.
So what does this all mean for you listening? While navigating these complex, fast-moving changes really requires more than just staying informed. It means critically assessing the information out there, understanding the different perspectives. It's definitely a landscape that demands continuous attention, and the impacts of these policies, they're likely to be felt for many years to come. All the best, and we will meet again with another important subject in the next meeting.